Welcome back to the Turning 30 podcast, a place where we talk about what it's really like to turn 30. I'm your host, life coach Emma Wilson, and I'm here to help you feel better, get unstuck, and be more confident in your 30s. I am really excited for this week's guest. As I always say, and for those of you who've listened to the podcast for a while, you'll be familiar with the fact that whilst I love hosting all of my podcast guests, I particularly enjoy hosting my clients. And when this specific client reached out to me and told me her mission, told me that she wanted to work on this specific subject, I instantly knew that it was going to be such a great fit, because you'll hear why and my own journey in this podcast episode. So I absolutely love interviewing my clients. We obviously talk about coaching, but this specific episode is going to be all about changing your relationship with alcohol. And the work that I did with Gabriela over the past 4 or 5 months of working together was truly incredible, because she went through her own alcohol-free journey in the past 2 years, and she really has a strong mission to help others to change their relationship with alcohol. And it was such a pleasure to work with her and to really, be able to support her to show up in the way that she is now showing up, and to create an amazing coaching program that I highly recommend for any of you who are looking to work on this area of your life. Now, I want to just say before we dive into the episode that this episode is by no means supposed to be preachy. It's not trying to convince everybody here to quit drinking alcohol or to be sober or to put any big questions or judgments on anybody who enjoys their relationship with alcohol or who doesn't want to change it. But having said that, although I really do want to caveat that we're not preaching, I do want to open this conversation because it's something that's made a huge difference in my life. And I know it's a really trendy topic to talk about right now because so many people are exploring their own relationship with alcohol. So this episode is for you, whether you are thinking of stopping, whether you've already stopped, or whether you're just thinking of cutting down or having a more conscious relationship. So really just having a little bit more thought into how often you're drinking, when you're drinking, and your behaviors around alcohol. So it's a really interesting topic and something I feel very, very strongly about and connected to, and I hope that you'll also enjoy. And as always, I would love you to let me know how this episode landed with you. Let me know any takeaways, any thoughts, anything that will help me know what to talk about in the upcoming episodes. We have lots of exciting Turning 30 podcast episodes planned. Now, before I introduce our guest, Gabriela, I actually want to remind all of you that at the time of recording this, only about 6 weeks, we will be embarking on the Align retreat. This is my first ever official retreat in the UK. It's taking place on the 4th to the 7th of August. I'm hosting it with Yelena, who many of you may know from following me and from listening to the podcast, is an incredible workshop and event facilitator. She is a human design expert and a breathwork facilitator as well. And the two of us are going to be running what can only be described as a transformative 4 days, how to step back into alignment, really taking time to pour into your own cup. There are still spots left, and I really encourage you to check out the website and to reserve your spot. And you can also message me if it's something you're thinking about, but there's something holding you back. I absolutely cannot wait to fly back to the UK and to meet my community there. The girls that are already signed up for the retreat are honestly just so incredible, and I'm so excited to meet everyone there. So on that note, let me introduce Gabriela. Gabriela Flax is an alcohol-free life coach, helping women and men make drinking insignificant in their lives. After having a major health wake-up call in her 20s, Gabriela began writing the modern handbook for alcohol-free living in a world that idealizes drinking. From relearning how to socialize, travel, and date without wine to exploring how to create true, not liquid, but true courage, Gabriela is passionate about helping you feel your best emotionally, physically, and without booze. I'm really excited to dive into this week's episode. Hey, Gabriela, and welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Emma.
I know I've said this to you like 7 times since we decided to record together, but this is a really important episode for me. And also, as you know, I say this many times on the podcast that having my clients on is my favorite episodes. Like, I really genuinely love having these conversations with people that I've worked with. We just finished working together last was it last week? This week?
Yep.
Yeah, last week. Yeah, after an amazing few months and so much progress and amazing transformation. But for me, and I said this to you when you first came into the initial consultation when we were deciding whether to work together, was your mission of helping people to question their relationship with alcohol and to potentially become alcohol free is really amazing. I find it really personal to me because I know I'll share more on this in the episode. It's a journey that I'm currently on as well. And I think that there's a huge trend and hype towards this now that we need to speak about. So it was really exciting for me when you came into my orbit and when we started working together. And I think I finished every one of our coaching sessions with telling you how much I love your mission. So it's a really proud moment for me to have you on here. I'm really happy that you're going to share. And I guess we'll start by you introducing yourself and sharing your personal journey to becoming alcohol free.
Sure. Thanks so much for having me. I'm equally super excited to talk about this. You know, when I first became sober curious around 2.5 years now, I never in a million years thought that it would become something that would become so ingrained in all the different areas of my life to the point now where I'm envisioning a future career for myself that surrounds alcohol-free living and helping people navigate that journey for themselves. And I just want to start with that because it is a decision that if someone, feels that that's right for them and does the work to help get themselves to that point, like it really can be transformational, not just in your relationship with alcohol, but it influences your relationship with everyone, with your career, with the people you work with your family, romantic partners, friendships. It really is just such an all-encompassing aspect of our life because drinking is so normalized. And when you remove it, you start to see actually really how it was ingrained in so many areas of your life. In terms of my own journey going alcohol free, I'll start by saying I was very much a social drinker. It's important for me to start with that at the outset, that I'm not speaking from a place of alcohol abuse or alcohol use disorder and addiction. I'm very much coming from an elective sobriety perspective. I was fortunate to be able to make that decision for myself and honor that decision in different areas of my life. But I was definitely a social drinker from the ages of probably 16 into 26. And what I mean by social drinking is, going to parties in college and having a few beers and shots, definitely drinking on vacation after work drinks. And it doesn't seem like a lot of drinking in the moment. And I look back and I think I was never a huge drinker. But when I look and kind of do the math on it, my drinking was catching up with me. It was something that I'd have one glass every single night. And the repetition of that, actually, it was a lot of drinking. And it's taken me some time to separate this thought of, oh, I didn't drink a lot or I didn't have an addiction with. My consumption was actually pretty high when you really just look at the round numbers of it. And like most of us, I drank because I wanted to fit in. Simple as that. I wanted to feel connected to the people that were around me. And for whatever reason, a lot of my life, I feel I've been a bit of an outsider. I've moved around a lot as a kid. I went to a lot of different schools. I never had a lot of friends really growing up. I had incredibly close friends, 2 or 3. They're still with me to this day. But I'd look at other girls having these massive groups of friends and they'd go on all these huge vacations together, or they'd always be invited to birthday parties. And that was never me. And when we got into the age of drinking and I said, oh, look, everyone's now doing this thing called alcohol. And if I do it, I'll be like them because maybe that's the equalizer in having a lot of friends. And it's what makes someone gravitate to you if you're drinking. And so I started. I just purely started on this desire to feel included and to, feel like that is what society was telling me I had to do. now I recognize only having two or three friends and having that really close group as a superpower. It's something that's taken a lot of work to get to that point. But at the time, it was like not having friends was an opportunity cost I wasn't willing to pay. And so I just thought I had to drink and
Yeah.
went ahead and started. And that kicked off, a decade of getting myself in this loop of just continuous drinking.
Yeah. And I think that's really important. Again, I know that you said this at the start, but I do want to really emphasize that this episode isn't for anybody or addressing the issue of addiction or alcohol abuse or alcohol use disorder, as you said, but it is really discussing that alcohol being a central focus in our lives. And, obviously I'm originally British, I think it's the same in the States. You do live in London. We should say that for the listeners to know that you live and work in London. And I think that the British culture and the American culture is very, very, very focused on alcohol in our social lives. And that's what we're here to discuss. We're here to discuss this almost kind of alcohol abuse that happens when we rely on alcohol in our social functioning. And thank you so much for vulnerably sharing about it being from that place that you desired that connection and you wanted to fit in. Because I think that the biggest pushback, and we'll probably talk about this later in the episode, is that people are afraid to not drink because of the consequence of what it will mean for them socially, that rejection they may feel, the discomfort they may feel, for being the only one not drinking or to be different from everyone else. So yeah, I just wanted to, I guess, reflect back on what you said and say that I think that we sometimes, most of us aren't aware. I want to say us, not me and you, because we're in a different position, but people listening, of how central alcohol can be to our everyday lives. And it's something that I know we've spoken about before, is that you don't have to be at rock bottom in order to make changes when it comes to alcohol. You don't have to go through addiction. You don't have to go through this huge transformation or this huge upheaval in your life to actually address that alcohol is something that is a problem for you or is something that you desire to change. Can you share a little more about the journey of, you got to the point where you understood why alcohol played that part for you? Why and how did you decide to actually go on this journey of changing it?
Definitely. I think, your point about rock bottom is so true. I love to say that rock bottom is relative. Rock bottom is exactly how you define it for yourself, for your own circumstances. And it looks 100% different for every single person. If I think about that concept, as I mentioned, fortunately, I didn't, or rather, I never came to a point where I have this one incident, this one rock bottom thing that goes, oh my gosh, I woke up the next morning and I had to stop. I went on a journey of collective rock bottoms that I'm happy to share. There's kind of two of them that interplayed. The first one was COVID. We went into lockdown and I'd always been very health conscious. I love exercise. Weightlifting is a huge part of my life and eating well. But it was the first time when we were in lockdown, where the lockdown illuminated the power and honor it is to support our bodies and prioritize our health. We went through something collectively as a population where we saw very healthy people get taken down by something. And the impact of that long term, it's negatively impacted all of us from the mental perspective of lockdowns, from the health impacts of getting sick. It's just not, we don't want to ever be sick. And in that moment, I just had the first time where I really thought about the fact that we get one life. I was around 26 years old when lockdown started, and I had never until that moment thought about, this is it. Like, we get the one life here, and I really want to be doing everything in my power to live it out to the best of my ability. What that means in terms of having the best mental health for the entirety of my life, having the best physical health for the entirety of my life. And this new one that kind of came into effect is having the best cognitive health. And when I talk about cognitive health, I'm not necessarily coming from the mental health perspective around anxiety and depression and other kind of illnesses that fall into that category. I'm really talking about our brain's health. And that's where the second piece of this comes through, that at the same time, my grandmother was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. It was around that Christmas that the first time I heard her not remember my name, not remember her daughter's name, who's my mother. And when I have these moments, I become a sponge for information. I was, of course, upset about my grandmother, but it motivated me to go learn everything I could about Alzheimer's and everything I could about how the brain reacts to different inputs that then actually catalyze that disease. And when I started learning, that Alzheimer's and the alcohol consumption have a direct correlation, I couldn't break free of that fact and really deep dive into the science behind alcohol in the brain. One of the things that came across, and it's really the fact that probably spurred my true decision, is alcohol takes 7 days to cycle through the body. And so even if you're only drinking on the weekends, let's say, and you're having a few drinks out with friends on a Friday or Saturday, whatever it might be, and you're not drinking during the week, you're in this mindset of, okay, I'm having my fun with my friends on the weekend, and that is great. And then I'm not drinking during the week. But when you put it into this 7-day context, your body is working continuously across the week to still process the alcohol from the weekends. You then top it up on Friday, and you're putting yourself into this continuous loop. And it's not a, fear mongering or scare tactic. It's the reality of it. It's a short-term stimulant that is a long-term depressant. And that really, really stuck with me. And knowing that my body over time would start adapting and requiring more and more alcohol to get that same dopamine hit from when I first started drinking. So, the happiness and the looseness feeling that you get from that single glass of wine, in time it becomes 2 glasses of wine to hit that same threshold. So looking back and having now this concept of, I get this one life, this is it. And every single decision I make on a daily basis contributes to my longevity. Paired with the fact that I already knew I was predisposed for certain cognitive illness, like Alzheimer's. We also have a lot of diabetes in our family, which alcohol can contribute directly to as well. Like, I just knew I had to make a really abrupt stop if my goal was to have the healthiest brain I could and take that forward with me in life. So yeah, that was kind of those 2 parallels of this concept. This is it. We get the one life, and then also from more of that.
Yeah. Yeah, like it feels like it all transpired at the same time. Then you came into this awareness. And I think what you said is almost like once you started to discover it and research it, you couldn't get it out of your head. Like it was almost like it was, the information was too present for you to just carry on and ignore it. At this point in time, how central was alcohol to your social life, to your relationship, to your friendships? Was it something that was very present?
It was incredibly present. I think even during lockdown, how many pub quizzes did we do with wine, and everyone would do that, or we would do, different tasting sessions. Like, it was so central to pretty much every aspect of my life. And I don't think I acknowledged that. A really great exercise that I did is I wrote down every single time from the memory that I had drank in the last year. And this would have been kind of mid 2021. And what I was trying to figure out is, when do I drink? And when I am drinking, why am I drinking in those scenarios? So I'd look back and I'd be like, okay, I had work drinks. I had 2 beers. I went to a birthday party. I had a glass of champagne. I was bored sitting on a sofa on a Friday afternoon and thought it was a good time for a martini, right? So I was doing this exercise with myself to actually diagnose how central alcohol was, because I had an inkling that it was probably more prevalent than I thought it was. And this written down exercise really helped me to see that. And I acknowledged that actually, there were very few parts of my life that didn't surround alcohol, even if I wasn't obviously aware of it.
Yeah. Wow, that's such a good exercise. And I think that let's suggest to the listeners that if they are thinking about that alcohol consumption, to do that, to really get clear on how central alcohol is to them. I think I want to share actually at this point, because I feel like we're already like quite far into the podcast episode, because I've never actually come out about this on my content, on my Instagram, on my podcast before, that I actually also am, I would say, 95% alcohol free. And I think it's really important to share a different journey, because I think that your journey was almost like, you used the word before, abrupt. It was almost like it came to you, this understanding, and then you decided to make some big changes. And I feel like for many people who have alcohol as such a central part of their life, that will be the journey that they go on. It will be an understanding of, okay, alcohol is very present. We've not even spoken about hangovers yet and how they hit, but that it's something for me. it's been a really different journey, you know, and I do want to just share if it's okay to take the microphone. You know, when I was growing up until like university age, in fact, up until when I was a lawyer in London, alcohol was, it sounds really similar to your journey, that I was never like a huge drinker. I mean, I'm very, very like the cheapest date ever when it comes to alcohol, because I can have 2 drinks and be like completely drunk. But, you know, at university, we would all, for want of a better phrase, get shit faced before we went out. And me and my friends would show up to the club completely out of our faces. I mean, I look back now and I'm like, oh, mortified at our behavior, but let's just forgive ourselves because we were only, you know, 19 years old. But that was a really central part of university life. And then even in London, like being more at law school and going on lots of holidays and traveling trips, and alcohol was just always really, really present. But gradually over time, and I think it was for me a big part of leaving London and leaving that British culture of drinking, which really isn't as present in my life here in Tel Aviv, but it was very much a gradual kind of removal of alcohol. It definitely wasn't a rock bottom at all. It definitely wasn't a decision that I really made up until very recently. It just kind of happened to be that I just realized and understood that alcohol isn't important for me. And alcohol isn't something that I enjoy. And I don't know about you, whether this is different, but I don't like the taste of alcohol, which I think a lot of people don't relate to. A lot of people love the taste of alcohol. They really enjoy it. And they love that feeling of being a little bit drunk, a little bit tipsy and blurry. For me, I don't like it. Don't like to be out of control. Really very sensitive to any drug in my body. And for me, alcohol is like very toxic. Like it would have a bad effect on my stomach. I would always wake up the next day. Even if I had 1 glass of wine, I can wake up the next day and just feel like not good and feel like I regret it and not be my best self, basically. And it would affect my work. And I think for the past like 5 or 6 years, it has been very only drinking in social situations where I felt very pressured to, weddings. And I will sometimes enjoy it as well. Like I do love a glass of cava at a wedding, and also birthday parties or kind of group events. But, you know, these days more and more, I just feel like, no, I don't even want to drink. And I just wanted to share that because I think that there's lots of different ways that people can come to the decision to stop drinking alcohol. And for me, it's been a gradual decline. And now, honestly, it's been in the last 2 months, maybe influenced by working together. And I also have another client who is an influencer for not drinking alcohol. She speaks a lot about it in her stuff as well. I've just decided that even that 5% where I do drink is becoming, it's like almost like not even relevant anymore. So I just wanted to share that because I'm sure also you know that there are so many ways to come to the conclusion that you want to become alcohol free.
Definitely. Yeah, there's so many different paths to, and I can't even say a similar outcome, because I really do think that the destination that you land on, whether that is being, you know, the language around speaking around this is also so interesting. You know, whether you define yourself as sober, whether you define yourself as alcohol free, whether you decide that you call yourself soberish, right? There's so many different outcomes, and everyone's journey to getting to that point is going to be so incredibly unique and special to them. But you're so right that all of us are going to basically go on these like thought journeys, right? Of understanding how meaningful alcohol is to us. You had a great point of some people love the taste, and there's this perhaps sense of sophistication that comes with drinking a fantastic glass of red wine, or, you know, this romantic idea of having a whiskey by a fireplace and it's wintertime and you're in the pub, right? Like there's so many different things that we associate. Well, there's so many different emotions and feelings that we associate to something like the flavor, but maybe the flavor is not important to you. And it really is more about relaxation.
Yeah.
And you've gone your entire life thinking, oh my goodness, like I have just had this really big week at work and it's time to come home and run a bath and put the candle on and pour a glass of champagne and just sit in my tub and read a book. And the more and more you start becoming aware of, did alcohol serve me in that moment? Like I was optimizing for relaxation there. Did it help me in the bathtub be more relaxed? Could I have been as relaxed in the bathtub with just my candle and the book? The answer can be yes, the answer can be no. And there's not one way, you know, in speaking so much about alcohol-free living, like I'm really just here to present facts at the end of the day and not tell you how to live your life. Because if you say, hand on heart, Gabriela, I relaxed because that glass of champagne did it for me in the bathtub. celebrate that. That is your decision. And if that is what is going to work for you, incredible. But they're so valid to be on the other side of that and start learning how to detach the concept of alcohol from things like sophistication, from celebration, from relaxation, because you can still do all of those things in the absence of alcohol. I'd love to actually kind of ask you about that. I know
Sure.
that you recently, if you're comfortable to share, were in Japan and traveling. And one of the areas that I used to kind of give alcohol a get out of jail free card was vacation. I had this like feral sense of we're at the beach, we're at the beach club, it's margarita time from 9 a.m. to midnight, which in my normal life, like I would never do that, like on a normal Saturday. But this concept of being on vacation,
Yeah.
just let all things go. Like, has travel and alcohol, like, what does that pairing look like for you? And how did your trip to Japan recently maybe change that?
Yeah. So this is the thing that's actually since I went to Japan, which is I got back, less than a month ago, was actually when I decided to really just not drink because of my experience there. And yeah, thank you for asking this because I know that we were messaging when I was there and I was sharing with you what I was going through. But in my everyday life, because my friends, my close friends who I see all the time know that I don't drink, very rarely get like offered a drink. When we go out, sometimes they're like, do you want a wine glass? And I'm like, no, I'm okay, thanks. I have my Diet Coke. And it's almost like it's not a big part of my life anymore because it's just the life I've created. And also my boyfriend, he's also alcohol free. And it's just, it doesn't really come up that much. And all of a sudden I was in Japan and I'm on this group trip and I didn't think about it before because it's just not something that even comes to mind. And then I'm with a group of people and I'm the only one not drinking.
Yeah.
And it doesn't cross my mind. And it's funny, I just want to kind of almost go back to what you said. I just want to emphasize the socialization of us with alcohol. It's crazy. I just wanted to say what you said about the bathtub with a glass of wine and when you've had a hard day and the whiskey thing, like, wow, that is so, so true. And I've like lost or dropped that socialization. And then all of a sudden in Japan, I'm around people and they want to drink all the time. And the day revolved around drinking. And I noticed thoughts of like panic almost coming up. It would be like everywhere we went, let's get a beer. And there's like vending machines all over Tokyo, all over Japan. And you just go and buy a beer and you walk on the street and you can drink it. Everywhere we went, it was like, let's get a sake. And, we would go doing amazing dining experiences. And there was all different types of sake. We even went to a sake museum. And it felt so strange for me to say, oh, actually, I don't drink. And I got myself in this weird position where I was like, oh, I don't really want alcohol. And I was too ashamed, or not ashamed, I was too nervous to say, oh, I'm sober. And I didn't know what label to put on it because I've never had to label myself before. And sober-ish is exactly probably what I would call myself. And yeah, I found it really hard. It was tough. And I didn't drink. And I got a lot of comments. I got a lot of pushback. Some comments about not necessarily being boring, but it was kind of like, oh, Emma's not going to drink. And it was with a bit of like, oh, she's not fun like the rest of us. And then there was one night where they all went to do karaoke together and actually had work to do. And I was the only one there that was also like running a business at the same time as being on this vacation. And I noticed myself like guilt, like shaming myself in my head and feeling guilty and being like, should I just go? Should I just go and be fun? I can have some drinks. I'll deal with the hangover tomorrow. It won't be such a big deal. And I was like, really like, didn't know what to do. And then I was like, I had a word with myself. I coached myself and I'm like, it's actually fine if you don't want to do karaoke. You don't have to be in a situation where everyone's going to be really drunk. And I didn't go. And the next morning they were all like super hungover. Like they were all like so many private jokes, so many videos of them drinking, like all these funny, hilarious things that happened. And they were all like lying in the breakfast, like couldn't, just completely basically hungover. And I had this weird of like, felt a bit left out, but I also felt really smug that I didn't have a hangover. And I was like, I feel great. And I'm going to be able to like have a really good day and be in Japan, which was really important to me. I think it brought up a lot for me of how hard it is to explain to other people that you don't drink and to explain to other people without having to be defensive and without having to justify yourself that I just don't drink and that's it. And I'm going to throw the question back to you. And that's, I think so many people, and I know we both got asked questions before the podcast about how to deal with social situations like dating, like just parties, being with friends, in a relationship with your partner, if your partner isn't sober. How do you deal with it and how has it changed your social life?
Definitely. And thank you for sharing all of that about Japan. It is so interesting. And before I kind of move into the social dynamics, one of the things that I want to call out that you did that I think is such a helpful tool is playing the tape forward when you're faced with that decision if you're going to drink or not. You know, what you said is, okay, everyone was out at karaoke, like they were pressuring me to come. And I asked myself, because I was feeling pressured, right? Of should I be there? Have I made the wrong decision and not going? And you were like, no, okay, have this work. And I know I want to have a great day in Japan tomorrow. And that was, you know, whether you identified that or not in the moment, like you were optimizing for how you were going to have the best day in Japan the next morning and how you're going to get your work done. And you made a decision based on what was most aligned for you. And, you know, you had your priorities there and you were like, no, I'm going to confidently stick to the priorities that I set out for myself. And is FOMO real? And you wake up the next morning and everyone has all these inside jokes. Totally. I cannot ever say that I have not experienced FOMO. You know, there have been so many nights where I've made the decision to stay home and I'm watching TV on the sofa with my dog and I'm watching Instagram stories in real time of my friends that I said no to going out with, partying, having all the fun, laughing, dancing. And it's so human, right? To feel like, oh, should I be there? You know, one of the things that you really taught me on that and something I use when I'm thinking about social dynamics is we have a finite amount of energy to use in a day. And that can change day on day. But at the end of it, you really have to ask yourself, okay, as much FOMO as I'm experiencing right now, and I could lace up my shoes and get out and get in a taxi and meet my friends and start partaking, even if it's midnight, like, is that energetically the right answer for me? If I play the tape forward and do that, and it doesn't even mean I have to drink, it could just be like joining them and being there in the moment with them. Is that going to set me up for the day that I want to have tomorrow? Is it going to interrupt my sleep and not make me feel my best rested self when I get up in the morning? And just because you say yes or no, like it doesn't have to influence it. Like I think at the end of the day, you really just have to be confident in the decisions that you make and build the self-trust that you're going to pick yourself with whatever route you go down. If you decide to go out and engage and be in the social dynamic and it's going to make you feel grumpy and tired tomorrow, like accept the fact that you've made that decision. And then when you feel grumpy and tired the next morning, don't harp on it. Move on from it because you already said, I decided to feel like this. Cool. Let's move on. Let's roll with it. In terms of though, you know, going back to your original question of explaining yourself when you don't want to drink in the scenario and having people, you know, clap back a bit of, oh, Gabriela's not fun or Emma's not fun. Okay, define fun for yourself. Like 100% in an alcohol-free journey process, whatever you want to call it, you've got to set these definitions for yourself. No one else's definition of fun is your definition of fun. If your definition of fun is sitting at home and playing with your dog and watching TV, and someone says, oh, you're not fun because you're not drinking, you're like, cool, your definition of fun's not mine. Like really have those definitions for yourself, and they can evolve and change. But I love that exercise of not letting anyone tell you what fun is, what exciting is, what being desired on a date is, right? If someone goes, oh, I don't really want to go on a date with you because you're not drinking, you're not desirable to me. Okay, well, that's not your definition of desirable. That's their definition of desirable. So like have that for yourself. And also feel like you never have to explain yourself to anyone when they ask. Your decision to not drink is wholly and entirely yours. It is no one else's. A lot of times you don't even maybe know why you're making an active decision to not drink in the moment. So you might not even have an answer to that question. And it's fine to not feel, or, you know, it's fine to feel like you don't need to overshare. If you're confident in doing so and you want to explain to someone why you're not drinking or you've made that decision, you can. But it's totally cool just to turn to that person and say, you know what, for me, it's not right tonight, and leave it there. And if they keep prompting and pushing, take a mental note of that's maybe not someone you want in your orbit as you're going through this journey, because they're not going to honor you at where you're at if they are being intrusive and trying to like scrape for details that you don't owe them.
Yeah. And I want to also elaborate on that when it comes to the dating thing, because I know a lot of my single listeners will be thinking, oh, the thought of even going on a date, for example, not only the other person pushing back, but also me being on the date and not even like having that awkward moment and maybe also wanting the wine to loosen you up or something,
Yep.
of being like, are you being your authentic self if you're drinking? If you want to become alcohol free or you're curious about it, then probably no. You're probably more authentically you when you're not drinking. Is it going to be right for you to have this person in your orbit who only wants to date you if you want to have 1, 2, 3 glasses of wine? Probably not. It's probably not aligned. And I think it's really important if people around you really pushing back on something, or they're the ones that really like getting it, like you don't want that person in your space and you don't owe them anything. And also another thing, which is going in a different direction, but many people are becoming a lot more curious about being alcohol free. So if people are really judgmental about it, it's probably from their own insecurities of them thinking about their alcohol use and how much alcohol is important for them. So that's another thing to say, is that I always like to remind myself of that in lots of different areas of life. And it's really relevant here of like, people can judge me all they want, but it's probably coming from a curious space, even if they subconsciously only realize that.
Definitely, without question. And I think it, as you've said, like that shows up in dating so much. And I'd argue that dating, when you're going through an alcohol-free journey, whatever that looks like for you, dating is probably the thing that I hear is most frightening when it comes to that. And not just dating, like even, as mentioned, I'm in a relationship, and deciding to stop drinking whilst in a relationship also comes with, all different kinds of fears. Like, my relationship with my now fiance was built on drinking. We met at a bar. We then continued to go to bars throughout the entirety of our dating journey. We then went on vacation together where we strengthened that relationship, but we were also drinking. And so I would ask myself, I got really scared of saying, or I got scared because I knew that I wanted to spend the rest of my life with him. But if I removed something that I considered to be a fiber of our relationship, was it all going to come crumbling down? How are we still going to have fun together if I was not drinking? Was he going to think I was less fun, less desirable, less attracted to me if I wasn't drunk? And I went back on that so many times. And, can I say it's been perfect? No, because relationships are incredibly dynamic and complicated things. But at the end of the day, if you have the trust from your partner that should be a part of that relationship, you're there to build each other up, make each other better people. If you're not getting that sense of, if you're not getting that trust back and saying, hey, I'm making a decision to not drink and I need you to meet me where I'm at, equally from your side to not be judgmental in terms of their decision around drinking. And I'm in a relationship where one person drinks and one person doesn't. And it's a two-way street. We have to respect each other where we're at. But yeah, it's totally scary to remove something that you feel is a fiber of that relationship, whether it's a defined relationship or whether you're just kind of in the early days of dating.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. How has your relationship been affected by it now? Like, is it something that you have worked through, and is your partner, does he still drink?
Yeah, he does. He does. And our relationship has changed in a lot of ways. I think the most notable one to call out here, and I kind of pre-cleared this with him because, before coming on, but, when you are having a debate, let's call it, let's not even say debate. Let's say when you're having a disagreement, right, with your other half, and one person has been drinking, one person has not. How do you navigate that scenario? And that has been a huge part for us, not to say that we're arguing every day, but definitely like these things come up. And what we've had to do and agree upon as a couple is that if we get into this space where we're having a disagreement and alcohol has come in, we both have to acknowledge that we're in different headspaces. Neither of those headspaces is the correct one, critically, because again, you're honoring where you're at. If you want to have your drinks, fantastic. For me, I'm not, but we both have to accept that we are in different states right now. Knowing that, there's an acceptance. We kind of signed this creed that we don't actually debate out anything or process arguments or process disagreements until we're both in the same headspace. Given that I'm the sober one, that means that we will pick up the conversation when he's ready to have that conversation. That has been something that has been incredibly useful in our relationship, because otherwise you're running around in circles and you're just going to kind of precipitate this issue, whatever it is, moving forward, if you can't both kind of sit and think about it and meet each other where you're at. So that's been great. And on the plus side, it's strengthened our relationship as well. Like, I've seen so much more, not encouragement, but we just have this much deeper I'm there for you, like I'm there for you-ness, whatever that's called, that transcends the relationship because I'm in a lot of situations where I don't feel comfortable. I'm really the only person in my friend group who doesn't drink. I'm constantly in social situations where, to this day, I can still feel really uncomfortable around being near alcohol. Mm-hmm. Have kind of tools and things to work through it. But my partner's the first person to see that. And he has developed his own tools of how to help me in those scenarios, which is incredible. And feeling that support from him has been nothing but reaffirming to our relationship and shows me that I'm with the right person because they are doing things in their life. They are taking actions that honor and respect my decision making.
Yeah, wow. It's so important because for you to speak about the positive side of it, and I actually want to ask the next question to focus on that, because I think that many people listening who are considering cutting out alcohol or decreasing their alcohol consumption will probably automatically, because we all have human brains, will think of all the negative things, will think of all the hard things, right? It's like the first questions that you ask is, how will I still socialize? How will I go traveling on holiday? How will I be left out? How will it be at weddings? How will it be, everything we're saying now? And we think of all the negative things, but we're less inclined to think of the strengths and the benefits and the positive things. And you just shared how much, even though it's been difficult, it's probably brought you and your fiance closer together. Can you tell me some other ways in which your life has changed since you cut alcohol? And yeah, like let's talk about a life without alcohol being something positive, and then we'll move on to talk more about some of the challenges.
Yeah, I love this question. I think one of the really cool things that's come out of being alcohol free is clarity. And it was not something that I was, as I mentioned earlier, I really came at this journey from a cognitive health perspective. That was what was important to me. But off the backside, you still reap all the same benefits of being sober, right? Like, doesn't matter how you get here. Everything that, if your goal was to improve your mental health and you stop drinking, then that's on the other side of it. Like, you still get to share in all of the incredible results that come from removing this substance from your life. And what I started learning is that in the absence of alcohol, I started noticing a lot more about areas of my life that I have never really introspected on. I started thinking more about what kind of friend I was to people. I started thinking about my career and if it was right for me. When I was still drinking, I very much had almost like this brain fog that just never really encouraged me to think about my job, my career, my relationships, my future goals. And in the absence of that brain fog, it then brought up everything that I needed to start working through. And that was really scary because for the first time in my life, I thought I had been on the correct career path. I was just doing everything society had asked of me. And it was like, okay, you're going to go to college, then you're going to go to grad school, then you're going to get a job, then you're going to get promoted and promoted and promoted and promoted. And then eventually you just keep going up, right? And in the absence of alcohol, it was the first time I had gained the clarity of going, is that what I want? Is that what's right for me? Does that even make sense for me? Scary thoughts, because I had gained so much validation from the fact that I had done everything right in society's eyes. I was trading promotions for happiness. Like, I thought getting promoted was just what made me happy. But actually, now I'm sitting here going, is what I'm working toward on the path I'm on what's going to make me happy in the long term? And I never had those kinds of thoughts when I was still drinking because I didn't really have like the capacity to even see that I needed to ask myself those questions. That's been a huge one.
Wow. I just want to say that in coaching, I call it a buffer. Like, we use alcohol as just one of the many things that we use to avoid our emotions and that we use to avoid ourselves, because it's just sometimes being human is really hard and we don't want to experience negative emotions. And when we feel sad or alone or stressed, we use alcohol as a way to diminish those feelings. And I can, it's not obviously been my journey, but I can only imagine what you went through when you removed alcohol from the equation. And then all of a sudden you were like faced with your human brain and actually all of the things. How did you work through it? Like, what happened when that happened?
Well, and this is kind of such a full circle moment, even the fact that we're on this call right now, because when I first started having these kinds of questions, my immediate response was, again, sponge mindset. Let's go learn. What does it mean to have all of these thoughts crowding my brain, and how do I process them? I read no fewer than 20, probably 25 books on every realm of self-help, mindset, growth mindset. And I was like, okay, if I can just learn how to process my thinking, I'll go process it. And what ended up happening, and books, podcasts, all of it, I took on so much information that I entered this action paralysis state. I was like, okay, I know I need to work through this. I have some tools now in my remit, and I have all of these different, anecdotes that I've learned from other people, but I'm having a really difficult time applying it to myself. I need really some like one-on-one guidance of, let's process the kinds of thoughts that are coming up for me. How do I work through them, and not just learn to accept them, but how do I learn to build action plans off the back of them? Because thinking is great. Action is what makes the change. And one day, a podcast called Turning 30 podcast came up on my Spotify recommendations, probably because of all of the other podcasts I was listening to. And I listened to an episode of yours where you talked about the importance of coaching in terms of making actionable plans, and how our thoughts are not something to be afraid of. Our thoughts are catalysts that can be transformed and produce the kind of life that we want for ourselves on the other side of them. And set up a meeting with you to learn more about what that actually could look like in terms of my life. And through speaking with you, we were able to set two really strong goals for who I wanted to become, and where I felt like I needed to really invest and process thoughts around. And that was in creating an aligned career path and stepping up into a more confident version of myself. You helped me see a lot of that, the confidence I had gained through these societal validations, through getting promotions, through getting engaged even. Like, I have so many thoughts on that. And, people celebrate an engagement more than they celebrate a lot of other like really pivotal like life changes and things that you do for yourself. I gained a lot of confidence because I thought I had to. And in retrospect, it was not the kind of authentic, kind of quiet confidence that I hope to lead my future life with, and that you've really helped me start implementing. And so this is where I'm definitely going to plug the coaching element, like being able to work with someone and understand that like going alcohol free was such a huge and important, pulling the wool off of everything. Like it made so many things better, but it also then started an entire new process of having to process, deal, and come to terms with everything you'd been using it to quiet. And that's what coaching has helped me with.
Yeah. Wow. It's such a full circle moment. And I remember when we first spoke and you were like, I've just been listening to all of your podcast episodes for the past 2 weeks. And I was
Every single
one. What came up for me when you were speaking is just that in a way you traded alcohol for working on yourself, for self-development, for making yourself, for fulfilling whatever it is that you wanted to do. And I think that, I don't know, I don't want to be too bold by saying it, but I feel like what an incredible trade for somebody to do, to cut something out of their life that wasn't necessarily serving them. If it feels right, like, let's keep going back to the point that we're not preaching, we're not telling every single person to become alcohol free, but for the person that it's right for, you can replace that. And then the challenges that come up, like you said, the emotional, mental challenges that come up, there is so many different rooms that you can be in. Personal development rooms. There are so many different ways, like you said, for you, that really was becoming a sponge and absorbing it. And you did trade it, and look what's happened since. It's like the knock-on effect, the compound effect of you not drinking, therefore having more space, having more time. Yes, it was so scary. It was completely out of your comfort zone, but taking that and making it something that worked for you. And it was very authentic and very aligned for you. And yeah, I'm just really proud of you, because I think that many people don't go on this journey because they don't know it's available to them. And I'm really happy for everyone listening to know that you absolutely can. And in a way, I want to say that I also, when I was 29, and originally, this is 7 years ago now, had my turning 30 journey, I was drinking then. I did drink, not a lot, but I probably sounds like similar to you. Like I would drink quite frequently. I would be out most nights of the week. And I remember really wanting to work with a career coach at the time and not having money and
Mhm.
being like, actually, I can stop drinking alcohol willy-nilly for the sake of it. And I would probably end up saving like a few $100s a month.
Yeah.
And I can stop buying loads of clothes that I'm never going to wear again, that I just bought fast fashion, and really like cutting out those behaviors from my life and instead pouring that money and that energy, that
Yeah.
time and energy investment that we don't even realize most of the time that we have into getting to know myself, learning about myself, and doing this work. So actually, it's really similar to what happened to you, but it was just, I almost forgot about it because it was so long
Yeah.
ago. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think that it's really important to know that you can do that and you can switch something that central to your life and come out the other side and build a completely new life, because your life looks really different now to than it looked probably 2 years ago before you had quit drinking.
Yeah, without question. And it's something that you have to want to do, right? You, for yourself, having support networks, especially going through this kind of journey, is incredibly important. Having people you can rely on, having someone that you can speak with who's going to hold space for you just to talk about what problems and feelings and emotions are coming up as you navigate your relationship with alcohol. It's so important. But at the end of the day, no one cheers louder for yourself than you. You have to find that kind of fire within yourself. And that is something that takes work. I'm not saying you have to, if you feel right now, I don't have that sense of fire burning within me, it doesn't mean that something's wrong with you. You just, through kind of understanding what that future life could look like for yourself and deciding that that's what you want, you're going to build that with yourself. You will in time build this kind of self-trust to honor what your future, to get that future life that you want for yourself. It takes time.
Yeah.
But what I'd like to share also is you're not alone in that. And, specific to this alcohol-free journey, there are so many people out there going through something similar right now. Alcohol-free drink sales in the US increased 20% August 2021 to 2022. There are 1.5 million Instagram posts that mention mocktails. There are 4 million Instagram posts that mention being sober, or rather like hashtag sober.
Mm.
And more people, if we look at the next generation, Gen Z, 1 in 3 are cutting back on drinking. 1 in 4 are already not drinking.
Wow, that's crazy statistic.
Right? Isn't that wild? Like, this is a tidal change. This is like the very social fabric of our world is truly changing. And I think a lot of what we saw, the rhetoric around smoking and cigarettes 20 years ago, is now being applied to alcohol-free living. I don't think it's a trend. I don't like ascribing the word trend to alcohol-free living.
Yeah, and I had this on my notes to bring up with you, that I read somewhere, maybe it was even a post that I sent you, that in 10 years' time, we're going to speak about alcohol being dangerous for our bodies in the same way that we already speak about smoking. So obviously we know that in the 1930s until the 1980s, like smoking was just really acceptable. Nobody knew how dangerous it was for you. And now obviously we all know what the world thinks of smoking now, and how obviously all the laws and the regulations around it, and that this is going to happen with alcohol. What do you think about that? Is that something that you also know about, see? Like, what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, as I said, I don't think it's a trend. We are seeing governments now even make, very strong policy recommendations, and not even recommendations, policy implementations around what alcohol means for their civilians. For example, Canada has recently come out and said that they've changed their recommended drinking amounts for men and women to none. They have really looked at the science and gone, we now see from a scientific perspective that no alcohol is the right, this is, again, is the way if you are trying to minimize your chance of getting different cancers, different brain altering, diseases. Like, that's the recommendation. We have Ireland, who's now by 2026 going to be labeling every single alcoholic product produced and sold in Ireland is going to have explicit health details about the impact of alcohol on our bodies. Like, this is not coming from nowhere. And so, yeah, I think I'm excited to just see a population and a generation really who has is thinking about alcohol in a different way. And I don't think that it's all coming from the health perspective. I think so much of it is socialization. And I think people are just getting to this point where they're going, you know what? Fun looks like something else than alcohol. There are so many. I mean, look at what the remit of activities and things that you can go out and do, from travel, from all, I mean, go drive go-karts, go do a painting class. Like, there are so many cool, artistic, creative ways that we can start using our bodies and using our brains that don't involve alcohol. And it's inspiring, I think, to see a younger generation separate themselves from historically what society has said alcohol must be used for.
Yeah, I agree. I see the shift happening as well, and I also really hope it continues. And I didn't know that about the labeling of alcohol, like you said,
Mm-hmm.
that Ireland have brought this in, and that's what happened with cigarettes. I remember it.
Yeah.
When I was at university, it was like we were still smoking indoors, and then that's showing my age, but it was whilst I was at university that they brought the
Yeah.
smoking ban, and you had to smoke outside, and that was like, what? I remember being like, oh wow, that's crazy. It is going to happen for alcohol, I think. I don't know how quick it's going to be, and how, how much it's going to be upheld, but I really see the shift happening. And I don't know, maybe the algorithm targets me because I speak about these things and with my friends, and that the algorithm on Instagram knows that I'm, basically alcohol free, but I'm seeing so much information from thought leaders in this area who are basically coming out neuroscience research. And I don't want to quote anything incorrectly because I don't have any statistics in front of me and I'm not a medical practitioner, but yes, exactly like you're saying, the science is showing us the damage of alcohol. And it's really crazy. In university, I studied psychology as a first degree, and I did a whole semester on one of the courses that I took was about drugs, basically, and alcohol being one of those. And it was also cannabis and hallucinogenics and all different types of drugs, and talking about the societies, like the socialization of them, and also the medical impact. And alcohol is the most dangerous drug, but it's the one that is the most common and the most like socially acceptable. And I remember at the time being like, wow, this is really crazy. I remember this was before any alcohol-free beers weren't available, alcohol-free beverages weren't even a thing when this is, we're talking like 15 years ago. And I actually am really inspired and grateful to see it shifting and changing, because, we've not even spoken about the dangers of alcohol abuse. And I think that it's really important for us to be going through this generational change. And it's great to be front row seats to it, but also, you're going to be playing a big part of that as a thought leader in this space, as a coach who is now focused on helping people change their relationship with alcohol. It's so great to see you stepping into that role that I know is so important and going to continue to be important in the next however many years.
Definitely. I think it's so cool to that point. Like, we're going to see more creativity coming out over the next years. I think that we have, not for better or for worse, but with the rise of the internet and with now artificial intelligence, everything has really, like, creativity looks new in this day and age. Creativity is coming up with how to leverage the tools at our disposal, like technological tools, in the most efficient and optimized ways. But when you look at what alcohol does on the brain, the lack of alcohol on the brain allows our neurons to fire more efficiently. Like, we can actually get more capability out of our brain in the absence of alcohol that is going to catalyze creativity. Our right and left sides of our brains are able to speak to each other better, which then provides, more opportunity for us to go and create new and exciting things. We're really, like, we're doing our society good by collectively strengthening our brains and having the ability to think more critically and create more creative outputs that everyone else around us is going to benefit from. So just excited to, see if the output or like the effect of this next generation drinking less, what that actually, what kind of radical change comes off the back of that in terms of technology, in terms of the arts. Like, I really think that we're in for another kind of pretty dramatic tidal shift in terms of what the next 10, 15, and 20 years look like.
Yeah, I really agree with you. Wow, there's so many topics that we didn't even manage to get to, and we're coming up to almost the end of the episode. I think that what we're going to do is when we release this episode, me and you will go live on our Instagrams and we'll carry on the conversation and we'll answer some of the questions that we received. Both of us received really specific questions about the struggles and the challenges to remove alcohol. So let's say that we'll almost do a part 2 for that. And I guess what I wanted to ask before we finished is what you would recommend for somebody who's listening to this, who feels that they want to not necessarily reduce their alcohol consumption, but just question it. They want to get curious and they maybe want to start their journey, but they're really nervous and afraid and it feels almost unattainable, like it's not in their grasp to do it. What would you say to that person, almost like where to start on this path?
Definitely. I think the first thing is acknowledging that if that thought has come into your brain, even just like once, think about the fact that we process over 70,000 thoughts a day. Like there's so much noise that comes in and out of our brains. If one of those thoughts that's kind of come into the front of your mind is, I might want to think about my relationship with alcohol, but I'm feeling like I don't know where to start. Even before you start, embrace that thought and just thank yourself for having that thought because it's come to you for a reason. And in embracing it, try and nurture it and water it rather than run away from it. The next thing is every time, and this is actually a piece of advice that I've just given to someone I'm working with right now on kind of rewiring her approach to alcohol, is the next time that you have a drink in front of you and you're in this mindset, right, of, okay, maybe I'd like to say no to this drink. Maybe I'm not sure how to yet. Think about how you feel. Literally pull out your phone, notes app. Before you make a decision if you're going to drink one way or the other in that scenario, just write down how you're feeling. Like, what are the thoughts that come to mind right now? Do you feel good about that decision? Are you confused? Are you feeling anxious? You're feeling overwhelmed? Like, whatever it is, just note it down. That's, then make your decision one way or the other. And it can be that you decide to drink. It can be that you don't. But whatever that next decision you take, write down your feelings and emotions on the other side. So again, phone back out, notes app, 5-10 minutes later. And what I would say is just start keeping a log for yourself. You don't have to act on any of this information. This is literally your own, let's call it brain market research, your personal brain mental research. Maybe name your brain. You can give it your own name or you can give it someone else's name. And so let's just say I name my brain Martha. This is Martha's thoughts. And there's a notes app on my phone for Martha's thoughts. And when I was thinking about if Martha wants to drink or not, she felt anxious before taking the drink. She then had it. And then she felt anxious after, or she felt anxious before, then did not have the drink. And then she felt peace after. Start creating that log for yourself. Once you've been through that for several days, weeks, months like this, take it at your own pace, start reading back. And in the instances where you found peace, is that something you want to continue moving toward? In the instances where you found clarity, is that the kind of emotion and mind space you want to continue moving toward? And over time, like your desire to start entertaining an alcohol-free life or a soberish life, whatever that definition is to you, it's going to emerge because when you see it documented down, you can start defining what you want your life to look like. It's hard to do if you don't have the market research up front to help you process that.
Yeah, it's like I always say in my coaching, reflect, accept, take action is like the 3 phases. And to start, you have to reflect. It's like with a GPS, you wouldn't put in Google Maps the destination without putting where you currently are. So important. I think that it's a really good piece of advice. It's just, embrace the thought and let yourself have it. Like, don't be afraid to let that thought come into your brain and know that you don't have to take action right now. Mm-hmm. And I want to just finish by saying that, any big behavior change in life, like changing your relationship to alcohol, is all coming from our thoughts. And we spoke about this a lot in our coaching program because, it's the model that I teach. And I think it's important to really say out loud that if you want to change that behavior and make long, sustainable, lasting change with alcohol, with anything else in life, it's going to require a mindset shift in some level. It's going to require you really uncovering beliefs, many of those that are subconscious. You even just said before, 70,000 thoughts, majority of those aren't even in our conscious brains. And that takes work, okay? And that work doesn't happen overnight. And you don't need to do it alone. So I just want to leave it at that and I want to really, really urge anybody who is in this place of wanting to question it and wanting to change behavior to be in touch with you and to really feel comfortable to reach out to you and to explore your coaching program, and to make sure that to know that you don't have to do this alone. And if it is something that you want to explore, then you can be supported. So on that note, just to end, can you share where people can learn a little bit more about you and where they can find you and how they can connect with you to start their own journeys?
Definitely. So I am on both Instagram and TikTok under Not Applicable Drinks. We'll tag that in the show notes as well, so it's easy to spell. But yeah, I think, part of my alcohol-free journey and my questioning of my own career path is learning that I was so passionate about the process that I went through and learning how others have gone through that. As I said, there's no one-size-fits-all model for this process, but there are kind of defined coaching techniques and processes that can help you think about your thoughts. And as I said with Emma, what she really helped me with is building that action plan off the back of them. That's really what the power of a coaching journey can be. So if you are thinking about maybe becoming sober curious, or you're already sober curious and wanting to transition more into an alcohol-free lifestyle, or you're already alcohol-free and like me, started then saying, oh my goodness, there is so much else here to process. Like, it doesn't matter where you are in that journey. I would love to kind of partner with you in that thought exercise. And that's really what that is. That's a partnership in thought, and helping you process that, and, making sure that we define who you want to be, how alcohol-free is going to help you get there, and then creating a strategy plan to actually realize that and bring it into reality.
Yeah. Oh, so grateful that you came on and that you shared your journey, and we had this really open conversation. As I mentioned in the episode, it is the first time that I've spoken out about it, probably because it's not something that is so present in my everyday, because it's happened so gradually, but I'm really passionate about it. And I do hope that some people are listening, this gives them food for thought, and that, again, like I said, they start to make some changes, and also to connect with you, and even just to follow you and see what you're sharing, because your content is so useful and so helpful. So thank you so much for being here. It's been such a pleasure, and I'll see everybody else on the podcast next week.